Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to share a journey with you that encompasses how living in China, experiencing culture shock, made me a better designer and a lifelong learner. And actually, a lot of it, the heart of it, is probably empathy. So, a little bit about me first. I'm British born Chinese. So, on the outside, known as actually known as a banana. So, I'm yellow on the outside, but I'm white on the inside. So, my mixed kind of cultural identity, I thought, would make living in China very easy, actually, to transition. But I was absolutely wrong. So in 2014, I got a job offer and I jumped at the opportunity. I was like, yeah, why not? Living as an expat in China, swapping my comforts living in London to an unknown venture living in Asia. After all, I wanted to tell the story before I'm 30. I've lived abroad. I wanted to design for kids rather than designing for power Ubuntu users. And also, I guess design and travel, for me, must really coexist to learn and grow as an individual. So when I arrived in Shanghai, I was welcomed by quite a grey, polluted sky. And then the second thing I observed was that in UK, we queue a lot. In China, no such thing exists. And actually, it's to the degree that it's worse than the tubes in London. People will physically push you into the tube. And we had a team building event, and I thought, well, my colleagues at least maybe might queue, but actually they fighted for the bus. So I was really surprised. But I found out the reason why they did this, because back in the day, actually living in China, imagine Chinese New Year, which is like Christmas, the whole population is moving. They want to get back to their homes, and there's not enough transport. So what's the only way to do is to push. And queue jumping is the only way. So it was a really hard lesson for me to learn that when you travel, remember that a foreign country is not designed to make you feel comfortable. It's designed to make its own people feel comfortable. And here are some other experiences I've had. So in UK, seeing a doctor is a one-to-one consultation. My first appointment, I had my friend who helped me translate because I don't speak a word of Mandarin. And secondly, in that room, I had other patients listening in, and that's absolutely acceptable. And I learnt later at the time is that they generally just knowledge share. So it's an opportunity for them to actually learn and share that knowledge as a community. In UK, we're pretty polite when it becomes communication-wise. Sometimes we're so polite we don't really tell us the real thoughts and feelings. In China, it's so different. They're direct, they're rude, they're so loud, they spit, and I don't understand what they're saying. And what I've learned was that in the restaurant, instead of asking, hey, excuse me please, to the waiter, you actually shout waiter in Chinese. So I found out later the reason for this directness is that it's a very fast-paced city. They're very practical, so their communication becomes very practical. And I only know this when living in Taiwan, they use Mandarin very differently. They do use the words like, hey, excuse me, thank you, please, and open a door for you. So as you can see, culture shock hit. I mapped out my emotional map, I guess. So before I arrived in Shanghai, really, really happy. By month 2, I hit rock bottom. And I wanted to go home, actually. I was really homesick. And even my manager was actually asking whether I wanted to fly back to see my parents and my family, my boyfriend, and so forth. And I really wanted to take that offer. But my local friend, told me this. So things can only go upwards now you've hit the rock bottom, and it won't get any worse. And if you go back to UK now, you wouldn't actually come back. And I guess then I decided to focus on getting well because I was physically and mentally really drained from having the culture shock. So I took it as a design challenge and using design thinking mindset. Let's take a holistic view of what is the source of this problem that I'm having. I tracked by my mood. I tracked the food that I ate to understand why I was getting so much pains. And just a quick note on that. In UK, we think of when we go to a doctor's appointment when we're ill, they're only really solving the symptoms of the problem. If you have pain, give you some painkillers. If you have a cough, give you some cough medicine. It might have side effects, but hey, that's how that you kind of problem solve. And actually, one thing that I recognized in Far East Asia is that they really focus on the source of the problem. Just like Chinese medicine, they look at things very holistically, and they look at that mind and body connection as well. So I reframed my challenge, and what I found was that actually all the symptoms was I burnt out in London, actually. I moved the problem and went to China, and then in China it got worse and it magnified. So how might I live well so that I can enjoy and make the most of my time living in China? I gave myself that 1 year. So I did a lot of, I guess, experimenting. I did yoga. I did learning about mindfulness. I kind of went to workshops, no sugar challenge for a month. And I learned survival Mandarin so I can actually communicate to locals. And just saying that I'm British-born Chinese in Chinese made them actually, I guess, respect me more and actually go, hey, you're actually trying, rather than they think I'm a local. So they treated me differently. And just a quick note on that, the difference with realizing that food is actually medicine. In UK, we have such a drink culture that is always about where do we go for a drink. In Asia, it's about where do we go to eat? What is the next place? So food is really in the heart of their culture. In UK, you drink a lot of the cold water, or ice cold, actually, in fact. And I actually found it really strange that in China, everything is hot. Even the water machine, it's warm water or hot water. That's the only choices. I found that later the reason why is that it's meant to be better for your digestion, and actually because of water safety, it's safer to drink hot water. I changed my lifestyle. I designed new habits, and that involved with using food as my medium. So me not having a really good relationship with food, I decided to go, well, if I can't eat sugar, I'm going to have some substitutes. So I use that as a way to experiment. So you can see that my learning journey consists of living in China for the year and recovering from that. It got better. I spent 6 months slow traveling in 6 other countries in Far East Asia before coming back to UK. And actually, you can see that even in coming back to UK, I hit the reverse culture shock. So it was just as hard going as well as coming back, which was rather strange. But that's a different story, and for another time. So what does life learning mean to me? It means that when you learn something new, try and find a way to learn and enjoy the journey. And remember, it does take time. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I think help for me was like a weakness, asking for help and being dependent on others. But being in a foreign country, sometimes it's okay to ask for help. And other people do like to help. And as a result, we're all learning. Celebrate every struggle, success, and mistakes and failure, because it's all a learning moment. And actually, that's showing progress. And it's the sum of all experiences that is important. and that's growth. So lifelong learner for me is like being like a kid. So actually living in China, I just feel like all the learnings that I used to do, I am a kid again because I'm immersed in a new place. I observe, I listen, I'm much more receptive to the environment. They're much more curious, they explore without judgment. They play Lego and start making things. They're fearless. They're not afraid to take the Lego apart and just start again and ask for help or get people involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love the graphic quality of your slides. That was really nice. The symbol was on alternate sides. And the points at the end is an excellent summary. In fact, it's taken away two things that I wanted to say. So well done. Thank you. As I was looking at your graphs with these peaks and troughs, an obvious question that was springing to mind was, okay, what would you tell somebody to protect themselves, to minimize those peaks and troughs? But then I thought maybe that's the wrong question. Is it important to go through that big trough as part of the actual experience?
So interesting enough, I would say China is my biggest life lesson. It was probably quite brutal, and it was way over my comfort zone. I like stretching, and but it was way over that. But I learned so much that I apply it to my everyday life, and that's why I said I apply it in my design work now. I apply it, and that's why I said lifelong learning is just part of that journey. So if you're receptive to that, you will adapt, and you appreciate, you will accept and let things go. I found out the reason why they behave the way they do, locals. And actually, that's part of me to accept and move forward.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
So if you've got the stamina for it, if you can tough it out, that's where the value is going through that.
Yeah.
Amazing. A couple of the things that you said early on about the cultural differences that you noticed just sounded really sensible after I thought about them for a minute. Like this idea that you have a group consultation with a GP, incredibly invasive, but then actually you said shared knowledge, and that makes perfect sense. That's a way to scale that. What would you say would actually do as a load of good here in the UK that we could learn from China?
I guess one of the biggest things I said is look at the problem holistically. So that's the kind of the Chinese medicine kind of way. And that's where they think food is medicine. And I found that actually traveling abroad for 6 months in different Asian countries, they all have different parts that can make your living much, I guess, more complete and more content, actually. So I never had the spiritual side until living in Asia. I never connected the body and mind at all. I was just running in London, and I never knew it. And that was a massive awareness, self-awareness.
Yeah. Okay. And I love the way that you applied a work discipline to sort of survive the experience and then improve it and enjoy it more.
Yeah.
Has it happened the other way around as well? Has your approach to design thinking changed because of the travel experience that you had? Have you built in anything into that process in your work?
Yeah. And I guess that's why it took me a long time to integrate back to UK, because a lot of things, my values have changed, and they were really important to me. So I had to almost work for a company that wanted some things like, hey, they care about education, they care about the learners, and that was a big part, actually. So I guess sometimes I think passion for me overlaps in both work and play. They're very, very linked. I'm not sure if it's a good thing that it's so linked, but it's also my internal driver as well.
Okay, and I guess that's part of the holistic approach too.
Yeah.
It's
quite interesting.
And building on that, do you find that your CV scores higher, if you like, because you've got this cross-cultural experience? Do people recognise it, is what I'm trying to say?
Not always, actually. So during the job hunt, it was actually quite hard, because sometimes it's a bit too holistic for my liking.
Yeah.
Because I want you, as a designer, just to solve that problem. That problem is very solution-focused, unfortunately. And they're not ready for that yet, actually, is what I found sometimes.
So it can be a challenge to demonstrate the value that it adds.
It can be a challenge, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you. Another question, please, from the audience. no, just, oh, yes.
I did all of them.
At once.
So I knew that, so I guess one of the frameworks that I did actually use was the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And I realized that I was, at work, I was super happy because I was living in a bubble almost. It was full of expats. So I actually enjoyed living like at work almost, staying there. And my job was amazing. But actually all the other levels, safety, living, day-to-day interaction, and the fact that I love talking to people and I can't communicate, that was so frustrating. So that was almost like, it has to be there. I have to prioritize intensive Chinese learning was definitely one. And then the other one, I guess, was a drive, was that my boyfriend was going to come soon and I want to be well.
Okay.
So I guess that was another driver to kind of go, actually, so during the week, I have maybe 2 days for Mandarin. Make sure at the weekend I go to a workshop or find something else. So I kind of scheduled the week almost and then adjust accordingly. So if it doesn't work after 2-3 weeks, and that's why keeping a journal is really important, because I was tracking how I was feeling and my mood and identifying the patterns there, and that would tell me what to prioritize next.
Thank you. And this idea of quantified self came across really strongly in a couple of places from your presentation. Thank you. Awesome. We're out of time. I've got to move us on, but thank you so much for that. And I'm going to invite complete strangers every time I feel sick to go to the doctors with me. Please put your hands together for